Now I'm here in one of my favourite places in the garden is of course the greenhouse. I've been growing plants in this greenhouse for about a decade and a half now. It moved from one house into another, and for those of you who are following me, you would have seen that journey as I built this new grow your own area, and it's settled in really well. But the magic of a greenhouse is it completely changes from, you know, one month to the next. At the beginning of the season it's overwintering plants, and then it's seeds that are germinating, then it's summer growing pots, containers, and you know, it can be even your houseplant hospital for a short while. But now, as summer is finishing and it's the beginning of autumn, shortly this is going to be full of winter crops that I'm growing from seed. But in the interim I take the opportunity to really pull in all my pots and containers that have had colourful summer plants in, many of them quite tender varieties that won't quite go through being outside in the garden during the winter months. And we call these, most of these are called bedding plants, because in the old days, in the industry we call them bedding plants, because when you had flower beds in parks and gardens they were full of summer colour, and it was called bedding out when you planted these plants into the beds. And that's things like geraniums and fuchsias and busy lizzies and petunias and verbena and a whole host of others. Not all of them overwinter very well. Some of them are annuals, which means they die off after a year, and others don't overwinter that well, or it takes so much effort to carry them on to the next season, you're better off to sow or buy new the following year. So in this video, what I like to do is to just show you some of the plants that I'm going to be overwintering in my garden, and some of the plants that I won't waste the effort on and I'd rather sow next year. So it really gives you a way to add up in your own garden what you can do yourself with the bedding plants that you've got. Well, all you need to begin with is a place to overwinter. Now, I'm using my greenhouse here. It's basically frost-free. So it can either be an unheated porch, you know, a cooler conservatory, a well-lit garage, greenhouse, or even a cold frame to make sure they're protected during the winter months. And certainly things like the geraniums. Now, I've overwintered this plant. Look at the size of it. You know, if I was to buy in that garden centre, it would cost me a fortune. When I bought it at the beginning, it was sort of this sort of size. And I took a cutting from this, and that's this one here. And then I took a cutting from that one to make this one. And I've taken a cutting from that one to make this one. So, you know, gardening can save you money. You're making and growing things. You're letting nature grow the plants rather than go into the garden centre and buy them. And that's the essence. The moment you get hooked on gardening and you're taking cuttings and you're sowing seeds, you are in fact saving money and enjoying the process as you go. So geraniums are really good to be able to overwinter, and I've got a separate video on that, so check that out. Fuchsias is another one, and again I've done a video on the fuchsias again. There's this quite nice bush one that I've got here. And then there's a big one I've got at the back as well. I'll be giving that protection to overwinter. The little pinks that I've got here, look at that, there's a cheeky pea growing in there. A little bird must have eaten one and pooped one out as it's coming around my pots. Begonias is another one that I'm going to winter. There's a couple of types of begonias, of course, other than the one that you grow as a houseplant. These are Begonias semperfloras. They've got slightly waxy leaf to them. And then you've got these ones here, which are tuberous begonias, which are a little bit more hairy. And they have got a tuber at the base like that. It's a disc you usually buy at the end of spring, beginning of summer. And I've got a separate video, please check that out, on how to overwinter your tuberous begonias. But looking down here, things like anything like polyanthus or primrose that are left over from spring. I've just taken a couple from this container, put them in their own individual pots. I'll be putting that in a frost-free area to overwinter, although some of them are pretty hardy themselves. Down here, petunias, it's a no really. They've been absolutely spectacular. They're still looking good now, but I'm just going to let them finish off. They'll naturally die back and I'll take them out of the container. The big geranium here, I'm going to overwinter. Behind me here, there's a little fuchsia. That's another fuchsia I'll save. Diascias, these lovely little throated flowers here. I've overwintered some of them in the past, but they look so scrappy in spring. And when I've sown seeds of fresh new plants, they're generally much healthier and much bigger, so I won't be saving those so much. I've got a whole host of little zinnias and dahlias and the like. The zinnias I'm not going to really overwinter, but some of the dahlias down here again, I'm going to let that plant die back. I'm going to take it out the container, take a look at the tubers underneath, and if they're good enough quality, I'll lay them on newspaper in a dry area and overwinter those. The helichrysum here, you could take cuttings from the helichrysum. I've chopped them back in the past, but they haven't really done that well. It's usually better for me to start new next spring. But here's a really good one to overwinter. This is Martiusburnham. I grew these from seeds at the beginning of the year, and look at the strength and health of this plant. It's had a massive flush of flowers, and it's now ready to go into its second flush, so I'll enjoy those late summer into autumn, and then I'll pick off the old flower heads like this, and I'll find a little space under here and let that be frost free, and then give me a lot of colour next year. So there's a lot of different ones. I mean, the chilies that I've still got in the greenhouse now, this is Apache. Look at that, isn't it gorgeous? When it starts to get really cold, I don't usually overwinter the chili plants themselves, although some people do. I will harvest all the chilies, wrap them up into cling film and put them in the freezer. Even this Scotch bonnet one here will also get a bit of harvesting and going. Now out the front, I've got more plants. There's a couple of geraniums in there. There's one in here that I'll take out and pot up and bring in. And also, San Vitalia's here as well. I'm not going to overwinter those. You can do them, but they look so scrappy, and if it gets a bit damp during the winter months, they just rot off. And likewise verbena, you know, some people overwinter verbena. I've never found that they do. You're better off in the spring. Now zinnias that I've got here, they're pretty good. I use those as cut flowers inside the house, but I won't overwinter them. Now the Nepeta here has been really good. I've had a go at this, saving this in the past. I just cut down the weight of the foliage as if you're taking a ponytail off the hair, and then I'm going to take the plant and the root, put it into a small pot and put it in the greenhouse to overwinter. And of course, if you follow me again in spring, I'll let you know exactly what's made it and what hasn't. And there you have it. I move them into the greenhouse. If you've got one plant that you're going to save in a pot with a load of others, you're not. It's usually better to take that plant out, pot it up, put it in the greenhouse, make sure that it is watered during the winter, you know, little and often, not overwatered. You don't want to get damp. And then plenty of space in between the containers for air movement as well, and that stops rotting when it becomes damp and quite cold. And that way, some of the plants, I really want to save this one. Look at the colour of that. It's new to us this year. It's another one that we just grew from seed. It's beautiful, and I'd like to see that bigger and more spectacular on my patio. And if I keep overwintering it, it's going to end up about this size. And we call these mother plants because they're the mothers that we take cuttings from to produce all the others. So there you have it. With your bedding plants, look to try and save one into the following year. Take cuttings if you can. You'll get more spectacular plants and you'll save money at the same time. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share. And for more great information, visit my website, daviddomoney.com.